hello to everybody on the Positive Vibes community. Hope you've all had an absolutely amazing weekend. The sun is shining in Manchester. I hope it's shining for you wherever you are. And I'm so excited this morning to be interviewing an amazing guy. A lot of you will know who he is. He's the incredible Scott Quigg, former world champion. And he's actually known as one of the hardest working boxers in the industry. And you're going to find out a little bit more about him today. So good morning, Scott. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on as well.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. It's great to see you. We've been having a little catch up beforehand, haven't we? So, I've actually met you a few times, Scott. More recently, obviously, with my son being on the amateur circuit, I met you recently. But you probably won't remember this. I met you quite a few years ago, and it's probably when you were just starting out in your career. And it was at a golf event, potentially the Howard Keel, I'm thinking. And you were sat on our table with Ricky Hatton at the time. So you must have been a young kid. I bet you don't remember that, do you?
No, and probably I've took quite a lot of punches to the head since that. So I forgive myself for that slipping my mind.
I think you were literally just starting out, and Ricky Hatton was bringing you out to all the events and everything. So you must have been quite young back then. So I remember seeing you there. But you have fought professionally from like 2007 all the way through to about March this year when you were at the Manchester Arena in 2020. Now, let me know if I'm wrong here, but you've had 40 fights, you've had 35 wins and 26 knockouts. Have I got that right?
You have indeed, yeah.
Wow, am I good or what? Thank you. But what I want you to do is I want you to take us right back to the very beginning, because I know you've literally been boxing your whole life. But I heard somewhere that you actually started by doing Muay Thai.
Yep, that's right. So, first of all, my first sport that was football. My dad was a semi-professional footballer who played for Accrington Stanley. So football was the sport in the family, really. And my dad used to take us to the field every night, and we'd practice, me and my brother. And I was at Burnley until I was 15, and then they released me. Right. And the few clubs that I was at, they kept saying, they released me because I was too small. So, but at the age of 10, I started Thai boxing to get a bit fitter and a bit stronger. And I started Thai boxing because my mum she was doing Thai boxing at the time. So obviously when I went down there as a kid, I was a bit of a hyperactive kid who used to like having a bit of punch things, and I ended up being very excelling in it and being very good at it. So while I was still playing football, I was obviously still doing Thai boxing at the time, and I was winning a lot of junior titles. And then obviously when Burnley released me at 15, that's when I put everything. I thought, well, I'm going to have to, put everything into Thai boxing. But Thai boxing, it wasn't, for the amount of effort and the amount of dedication that I would put into it, in the long term, you couldn't make a living off it. Financially, it wouldn't have been, it was a very hard sport, and there wasn't really a big reward at the end. So I remember, I thought, well, I'm going to give amateur boxing a go. Because I'd always wanted to do boxing, but because my mum went to the Thai boxing gym and it was closer, it just meant, well, it's the same thing. You can punch someone. So,
was there a boxer that inspired you back then to actually make the switch from Muay Thai to boxing?
I was always into boxing. Obviously watching the Tyson fights, the Nazim fights. As every youngster would, look up to them sort of fights. The big fights were. Maybe mum and dad let me stay up late to watch it. So I'd always wanted to do boxing, but it was just that because my mum went Thai boxing, and it was just, it's the same thing. You can punch something and you can have a fight with somebody. So eventually, like when I did make the move to amateur boxing, I was still Thai boxing at the time, but I went in the championships, and I ended up winning the championships. So then I thought, so then I got a call up for England. So then I boxed for England. And from that point on, then I thought, well, I'm in now.
Yeah,
So, and I was very fortunate that a fellow I knew was my first professional trainer, Brian Hughes, a guy I knew from Bury. He took me down to his gym.
okay.
And the day I walked in that gym, Brian Hughes, that was the day that I wasn't turning back. You know, boxing was the way forward, and it was from there it just snowballed.
Yeah, yeah. And do you know what? I mean, we were talking about earlier, weren't we? To get to the top of any profession, to get to the top 1%, you've got to have discipline and commitment, and you have to make a lot of sacrifices along the way. I mean, you've been boxing, like you say, since you were like a kid, like 10 years old you started, and obviously 2007 you started professionally. Just talk us through, on the run up to a fight, talk about the sacrifice and the commitment. What kind of discipline did you have? What was your daily method of operation on the run up to a fight?
Now, people obviously in boxing and said, if someone mentions not my name about boxing or ask about me in boxing, they'll say I'm the most dedicated, most diligent. I don't really cut any corners, and I take it to the extreme when it comes to the discipline side of things and the way I've lived my life through my career, and it was when you I used to be basically in camp all the time, but when I'd say 10 weeks, I'd say I do a 10-week camp, then literally it's training 2-3 times a day, eating. I'm in bed for 8 o'clock, 8:30 at night. I'm up at 6 in the morning. It's something that I didn't find it hard. I actually enjoyed it because it gave me a purpose and it gave me a routine.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that I had over most people is anybody can be disciplined for a certain amount of time. Anybody can do the right thing for a certain amount of time. Yeah. But the key to any success is the consistency of what you need to do. And unfortunately, some people get sidetracked easier than others. And the real key ingredient to fulfilling your potential is consistency. And that's what I was very, I was aware of that, quite early into my journey, to be honest with you, because I was quite big on that, learn from other people's mistakes, so it minimizes the amount of mistakes that you make. And
well, success leaves clues, doesn't it? So you just for people and follow the clues. Yeah. I heard that Floyd Mayweather likes to train in the middle of the night, basically, because in his mind he's got the upper cut on, and stuff like that. So all those mind hacks and discipline, and it's just incredible. And I know that nutrition's played a massive part in your career as well. Was that from the beginning, or was that something that you learned about and discovered as you went through your career?
Nutrition has been it's ended up being a massive part of my life, to be honest with you. Early on, I was learning and getting educated on nutrition as I was coming through, on my journey, and then it was. I had quite a bad, I'd say, relationship with food as such, as in, because I'd train all camp, I'd eat so well, so clean, and then after camp, then you let yourself, you binge a bit, and at a time, when you're in your early 20s, mid 20s, you get away with it. Towards when it was coming to when I was 28, 29, things started to get harder to make the weight, and you've got to start being more professional when you're not in camp. So even though I was always training, even though I'm only a smallish guy, I can put the food away. And it come to, I think it was, to be honest with you, food's a comfort.
Yeah.
When someone's feeling fed up, when someone's, things aren't going the way, one of the big things that a lot of people turn to is food, and I've done it myself, and it doesn't help. It's a comfort, and then obviously the more you have that in your head, the more you're going to be eating, because the more comfort you're going to be needing, and so on.
Yeah.
And it's like a vicious circle. And I brought in, I think it was 2018, I brought in a nutritionist called Scott Robinson, and we become very, very good friends as well. Speak to him daily, and he's at top of his game. But not only did he educate me on food and how to, nutrition and everything, he also educated me on it when you're not in camp.
Yeah.
To be, because, and it's something that I owe him a lot to be honest with you, because I'm a much more happier person now because of him and the food that I eat, daily. And I know how I feel if I eat a certain way and certain foods. And honestly, I do believe, especially for me, food and exercise in the morning is what keeps me in a very, very good place.
It's not just physically, it's mentally, it's like the whole kit caboodle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because going back to the weight side of things in boxing, I mean, a lot of what people probably don't see a lot of is the weight cutting a lot of boxers have to do just prior to a fight. I know my eldest son fights about 56 to 58, and there is a bit of weight cutting goes on.
Yeah.
In professional boxing, you get like the day before weigh-in, don't you? Amateur, it could be an hour before.
Yeah.
So it can be quite brutal. Did you have to do a lot to weight cut prior to some of your fights?
Yeah. I mean, I can say it now. When I used to make super bantamweight, which is 8 stone 10, 54.6 kg, I think it was, or 54.7 kg. I was massive for that weight, and this towards the back end of that, back end of work before I moved up, I was losing 12 pound the morning of the weigh.
Wow.
I won't say how I was losing that, but but the thing is, I at that time, because I did it, it was the safe way I was doing it, and it was the people that I'd brought in, because I knew exactly what was coming out my body. So then once I'd weighed in, I knew exactly what needed to go back in to make sure I was healthy and safe to fight. And don't get me wrong, if someone was saying I have to lose 12 pounds in the morning of a weigh, I'd say, listen, mate, move up. It ain't worth going up, going through what you have to do. But why I brought in the Scott Robinson is, it was 2018 when I'd moved. I was fought Oscar Valdez in America, and I fractured my foot 4 weeks before the fight. But I'd sparred him a year to nearly the day that I fought him, and all we did was stood in the middle of the ring and knock 10 bells out of each other. So I thought, I'm not going to have to move as much. I'm not going to have to move really. We're just going to stand and, last man standing. So I still was training, but I couldn't run, and I couldn't have the intensity of the training that I needed to shift the last bit of weight. So obviously I come in overweight, as I think I was 2.5 pounds over. So don't worry, the amount of stick that I got on social media, that's all to me like water off the duck's back. But that was why I ended up bringing Scott in because I needed to obviously make sure that when I do return, I come back and
Fighting strong, absolutely.
yeah.
We were talking earlier on, Scott, about your family. I mean, you've got such a close connection, especially to your mum, haven't you? She's like, you know, she's your absolute best mate. And you left school at 14 to pursue a career, obviously footballer, boxer, and you obviously went into boxing. How your mum's been to a lot of your fights, hasn't she? I mean, how does she deal with that? Because I'm going through the same thing. How does she enjoy watching you fight? What's her take on it?
Well, I'll give you an example of what she's like when I was fighting.
Similar, yeah.
So that's what she'd be doing, and then whoever she's gone with, she'll be going, how's he doing? How's he doing? But yeah, like I said, my mum's been my best friend since a kid. She's been there through all my career. Every time I used to work to America for training camp, she'd come out for the whole camp. She'd be timing me on the track. She'd be timing me on my run. She'd be cooking for me. I couldn't have asked for any more support, you know. And obviously, and my dad as well. And that's why, because of, obviously, they let me drop out of school when I was 14. At the time, and rightfully so, a lot of people like was looking to say, like, kind of parents, are you letting your kid drop out of school? And which is I totally accept what their opinion, because I wouldn't advise any youngster to drop out of school, do all the
you in the skills that you had at that time, wasn't it? They had so much belief in you.
And I think it was, like I said, they seen that how much I wanted it, and for them to have let me drop out of school, that always made me stay dedicated and stay, you know, because I thought, hold on a minute, they've made a big sacrifice and let me drop out of school. So how can I start hanging around on the streets with my friends and not dedicate myself to, you know, and just basically throw it back in the face. So that's a big part, I think, why obviously I have the relationship I do with my parents, and obviously why even to this day, like I said, my mom's my best friend.
That's lovely. So what advice would you give to like kids starting out on the circuit now, kids wanting to get involved in boxing, or kids that are like Alfie on the amateur circuit now? What advice would you give to them?
The advice to give, when this is through my experience. So when people used to say to me, I'd be going to the gym on a Friday night. I was very fortunate that the guy who had the gym used to give me a set of keys. So on a Friday, Saturday night, I'd be in the gym practicing. Yeah. And people had, you know, said, oh, you're missing out. You know, you're not missing out on anything. You know, when sometimes you think your mates are having a good time and they might be having a good time for an hour, 2 hours. You're not missing out if you stay dedicated and put everything into it. Trust me, the rewards are so much worth better, you know, from the so-called sacrifices that you have to make. You know, people growing up, obviously, oh, you're boring, you never do anything. Maybe so, obviously, I'm in the gym, I'm traveling the world, obviously, training, and I'm thinking, but yeah. I don't understand. Just my point of view was, what am I actually missing out?
Exactly. It's those short-term sacrifices for long-term gain, and you're the evidence, aren't you?
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing that, again, that was a big point which always sticks out in my mind. I remember I went out one Friday night. I thought, well, I'm getting that much steak. I said, oh, okay, I'll go. And I remember, and I think it got to about 8:30. And all we was doing is walking the streets, and I just thought, and one of me mates who I was with threw a brick at a bus shelter and smashed, and it smashed, and all the glass smashed. And I remember I punched him, and no word of lies, it's a true story. And I punched him, and everyone's like, "Well, why have you done that?" I said, "Because every time I'm on the way to school, there's an old lady sat on that bench." I said, "And now, when it comes to Monday, she's not going to be able to sit on that bench. She's going to be stood up." And on the Monday, the old lady was stood up, and it's a true story. And I just thought, what? I'm not missing anything.
No, exactly.
Going out on a Friday, Saturday. I'm not saying every youngsters on a Friday, are doing that. But that was another thing that I thought, no, this is.
Yeah, I'm missing nothing. So work hard, all the kids on this page and all the parents who've got kids in the boxing world. So Scott, you retired back in March now with your fight for Manchester Arena. We were chatting about this earlier. This quarantine time's given everyone a lot of time to rethink and reset and refocus. What is in the future now for you? What kind of direction are you going to be taking? Are you going to be coaching or opening a gym, or what do you want to do in the future?
Like I say, this is sped the process up, to be honest with you, because obviously I was supposed to be heading out to LA for 6 weeks. I was just going to go out there, have a bit of downtime, and then come back and then figure out and think out what's the next path. So at this morning, that obviously changed it around now, so it speeded things up. Obviously, I believe I've got a lot to give back to the sport, and for instance, I'd like youngsters coming through. I'd like to help, and not only help coach them, help them bring the potential, but like sort of mentor them, because of the experience that I've had through boxing. And the boxing's known as a tough man's sport, and I tell you, they have emotions, and they're as mad as other people. Supposedly a boxer is supposed to be tough. Hey, they have a softer side, and they have a vulnerable side as well. And I'm speaking from my own experience as well. So sometimes I see a lot of boxers and a lot of young fighters coming through. They feel like they can't talk.
Yeah.
They feel like they can't talk and ask questions. And to ask for help is not weak. It's one of the strongest. It's one of the strongest things you know. And at first, obviously, you when you coming through, you actually don't realize that. But then once the sooner and quicker you realize that, the more that journey is enjoyable. And I'd like to be, like I say, I'd like to be available for youngsters if they want to reach out, ask questions, mentor them. But like I said, I'd like to go into coaching, but eventually I'd like to go into speaking. That's something that I'm passionate about, and something that it is something that I do want to eventually get into sort of mindset speaking.
You've got a lot to say. You've got a lot of experience under your belt, and you've got, people need to hear your advice and your inspiration and your motivation. I think that would be an amazing move. We can't stop this interview though, Scott, without mentioning, actually, I'm a bit of an Insta stalker of yours. Not so much for you, but your bulldog Champ, your French bulldog.
Yeah.
Is he still asleep?
Come on, wait. Good boy, come on. He's still a bit bug-eyed at the minute. Come on.
He's absolutely gorgeous. If you are on Instagram, just head over and follow Scott, but also follow Scott Quigg as well. It's the most beautiful French bulldog. I saw him the other day in a little Montclair jacket. It's like, oh, hello, gorgeous.
He's
hello, Champ.
He's 10 week. His half brother will be on his way over.
Oh, my youngest is desperate for a dog, so I might have to get the details off you of where you got Champ and his half brother from.
Honestly, the guy's called Aaron, Texas Frenchies, and he's based in Texas in Dallas. Honestly, I'm not one of them to plug people for plugging some.
Oh, look at Champ though.
He produces very, very. I couldn't have asked for a better dog.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And it's been an absolute honour talking to you today, Scott. I really appreciate your time. I'm sure loads of people on this page have got loads of tips and just to hear your inspiring journey. And like I say, follow him on Instagram. But one final thing I've got to ask you: when this quarantine is over, can we have a sparring session between you and Alfie?
We can indeed. And I was just about to say, and I would like to come and help him as well.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
And even not just as a one-off as well, if he wants, any help or on a weekly basis or whatever, I'd be more than happy to, come down and hold the pad for him, give him some advice, and hopefully help him improve.
Fantastic. I mean, you couldn't find a harder working kid, actually. You will actually get on so well. There's a lot of things very similar between you guys. So thank you so much. That would be incredible. But thanks to everyone on the Positive Vibes community. I know you've enjoyed this interview. Scott, I can't wait to see you on the other side of all this. Stay safe. Keep Champ going. Bye, Champ. I'll see you all later. Thank you so much, Scott.